worse. It just feels like the end's coming.
Like many sufferers of that internal terror, Michael believes he faces a society that doesn't understand what he lives with every day.
If I was in a wheelchair, people would understand why I was late to class. But you basically look, you know, kind of normal, and I never let anybody see my problems. They don't get it.
And that's why at school, Michael shared his secret with only a few friends, including a university official.
There weren't very clear boundaries in our relationship. Like, was he the dean, associate dean, or was he my friend?
But then one night during his freshman year...
And that's where I had my panic attack. The second floor right.
Michael, alone in his dorm, suffered a particularly severe panic attack.
It was probably the most scared I probably have ever been.
Michael reached out to his friend, the associate dean, for help.
He just told me either check yourself into the psych ward of a hospital or you're going to be taken out of school. I immediately called my dad.
I said, wait a minute, hold on a minute.
I said, there's no reason for this kid to be in a psych ward.
Michael's parents, Ron and Jan Mushan, still thought they could work out a compromise with the school.
I said, how about if one of us comes down and we take him to a doctor in the morning?
The next morning, Michael did go to the doctor, but Millikan University said he was out.
He was flat out kicked
Kicked out of school.
I was just dumbfounded.
Dumbfounded because without even waiting for the results of the doctor's examination, the university concluded Michael was a potential danger.
Do you feel like you're dangerous to yourself or other people?
Oh, no, no.
Generally, they're not dangerous to other people.
Psychiatrist A.J. Allen is treating Michael now.
There were some unique things to Michael, but not anything that would have caused me to think, oh yeah, this kid ought to be pulled out of school.
We were shocked.
Karen Ward, an attorney for the civil rights group Equipped for Equality, filed a lawsuit for Michael under the Americans with Disabilities Act.
What they did do was make an assumption. A person with a mental illness might be a threat, so we better do something about it. Might be is not the law.
The prospect of the lawsuit had its effect. A month after withdrawing Michael from school, Millikan University agreed to readmit him. Michael agreed to continue to consult a physician and to take his prescribed medication. But from Michael's point of view, it was something less than a victory.
They didn't even say sorry. I know they were wrong.
The university continues to say it acted in Michael's best interest, that they did nothing wrong. Now a junior, Michael has been back in Millikan for almost 2 years.
I wasn't gonna have anybody tell me I couldn't be here.
Michael still has panic attacks.
Right now, I have 2 minutes to get to class.
Fewer now, maybe 2 a week. But he's on medication, and he's managing.
I kind of just want to do the best that I can and keep up with everybody else, you know?
In a way, Michael is now working on a double major, finishing his degree in music while trying to educate others about his invisible illness.
People don't know, and it's like, it's somebody's job to tell them because they're not going to find out on their own. I just hope people meet me and, or if they do know this about me, aren't scared about coming around me, you know? I just hate to miss out on, like, a good friend, you know?
Still to come.
I was just really tense.
Teresa puts her treatment for panic to the test. And Chad taking an incredible leap of faith. That's next.
On the last Late Show, Dave got a heartfelt welcome back from Julia Roberts.
What? I'm so glad you feel better, though.
Next Late Show, Kathy Lee's behind Dave's desk. Don't miss it.
Here's your regular internet homepage, and here's i1.com. It's free. You use it like Yahoo, Excite, or other search engines. Only i1.com gives away $10,000 every day, $1 million a month, and $10 million on tax day. Which one would you choose?
Very loyal to this site. I'm not going to abandon it for some new guy with a truckload of cash.
You're kidding.
Of course. Do I look like an idiot? Look at this cash.
Introducing i1.com. Why wouldn't you?
Am I on? Geico Direct could save you hundreds of dollars on car insurance. Result?
Smaller bill.
Geico, a 15-minute call could save you 15% or more. A typical car insurance agent is on the job during regular business hours. On the other hand, Geico insurance professionals are on the job 24 hours a day. Geico, a 15-minute call could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
He's got Zagatron? I'll exchange it.
Introducing e-merchandise return from the United States Postal Service. It's so simple, your customers can print a prepaid return label right from your website. Now the stuff they buy online practically returns itself. Easier exchanges for them means more business for you. What's your e-priority?
Fly like an eagle.
For every reason to travel, there's a Best Western to stay in, including 5 in Hawaii. And now get triple miles on participating airlines with every stay.
I'm just scared I'm gonna black out. I've just kind of accepted this is who I am.
Teresa Murphy.
I used to be real afraid to be at the top of the bridge.
And Chad Dyer had spent years battling panic attacks.
We're gonna hyperventilate.
By the time they underwent an intensive new treatment at Boston University.
I can't do this. You know it's not gonna kill you.
Now, weeks later, how are they doing?
Great.
I have to tell you, compared to the last time you and I spoke, you seem like a happier person, are you?
Yeah, definitely.
Teresa appears to have won a reprieve.
I mean, I'll still be nervous and anxious.
From a life sentence of panic attacks.
The thing now, it isn't gonna affect my life and, you know, prevent me from living my life.
Incredibly, the young woman who could barely leave her house 3 weeks earlier
Hey, what's going on? Hi.
already has a new job.
So they do ask that you take a brief tour of the resort, but I'm doing telemarketing. Now I can do that.
Teresa's diary, once a reflection of her despair,
It's so relieving to have finally found something that really helps.
now describes the joy of reclaiming her life.
But for the newfound peace within myself, I want to thank my therapist and Dr. Cammie White. There are no words, but I thank you and love you for everything.
As for Chad,
I feel like I can do anything now.
he's out to prove he's overcome his panic disorder in a big way.
I want to jump out of a plane.
That's right, the man who was once too frightened to get on a plane
Ready to go skydive.
is about to jump out of one. 48 hours flew Chad and his wife Jessica down to Daytona Beach, Florida, so that Chad could fulfill his dream.
Right arm. Pelvis forward, the head back. A little closer to the door. Once you learn what panic is, it's very simple to take that monster and use it to your advantage, actually.
Jumping out of an airplane at 14,000 feet is enough to give anyone a panic attack.
If I can overcome this, there's nothing that I can't do. When you're sitting there at 3 miles up, looking down, a lot of apprehension.
For Chad, it's a leap toward a brand new life. He's conquered his fear.
Holy moly! You can go from being a panicky, anxiety-ridden person to completely having the life back that you always wanted. Jessica! Oh my God!
Awesome. Incredible.
Fortunately, it's not necessary to jump out of an airplane to overcome panic. But facing your fears head on, as we've seen Chad and Teresa do time and again tonight, is becoming a mainstay of psychotherapy, according to a recent Surgeon General's report. For one thing, exposure therapy offers the prospect of faster results than traditional talk therapy sessions. And that's helpful, since insurance benefits for those sessions have been cut sharply in recent years. Most panic sufferers still rely on a combination of psychotherapy and drug remedies. The National Mental Health Association says up to 90% of those who get appropriate treatment for panic can expect to see improvement in their condition, offering high hopes for taming this monster of the mind. That's 48 Hours for tonight. Here now is a preview of our next broadcast.
There was a school of medicine.
This family was forced out of their home when something mysterious moved in.
This is not overdoing. No, absolutely not.
It's a toxic mold that can turn deadly.
In layman's terms, told me that I had brain damage.
And it's more common than you might think. The daughter of racing champ Al Unser Jr. was paralyzed by a mysterious infection overnight.
I looked
from computers, cell phones, and radio, and send negative commands through the television airwaves.
Don't tell him.
All the voices are evil intonations urging destruction and harm. Ken Steele has heard those voices most of his life.
I was 14 years old, listening to the radio like a lot of kids, hiding it under my bed. The announcer came on, and he started talking directly to me. I mean, he was talking about me and to me.
The voices commanded him to hurt himself.
They were predicting my death, and they were telling me how to electrocute myself. They were telling me how to burn myself and just explode myself.
Ken's behavior became increasingly bizarre. The voices got louder and louder every day. He was no longer in control of his life. They were.
And they were very real.
Very real. As real as your voice.
Ken's worried parents took him to the family doctor, who finally put a name to his terrible ordeal: schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is a mental illness that is still largely a mystery. Its cause is unknown. Doctors can't explain why victims have symptoms such as paranoia and delusions. They don't know why monstrous hallucinations affect many schizophrenia victims, why 25% see visions and about 60% hear voices.
I couldn't do anything. I was so sedated.
Ken and many of the members of his support group share a history of seeing visions and hearing voices. Doctors say auditory hallucinations are often more dangerous than visual hallucinations because the spoken messages can drive victims to self-destructive behavior, go to tiny percent to turn violent, and eventually push 1 out of 10 to commit suicide. Schizophrenia affects men and women equally. In the movie, Out of Darkness, actress Diana Ross portrayed a young woman stricken with schizophrenia in her late 20s, battling the voices.
Don't do it, baby. No, I'm not gonna hit you. My baby. Leave it alone.
Women are most often affected in their 20s and 30s, while men typically begin in their late teens or early 20s. Dr. Ralph Hoffman is acting director of the Yale Psychiatric Institute and an expert on schizophrenia. He has watched many of his patients struggle unsuccessfully to block out the imaginary voices.
It's very, very hard. I received a letter from a patient describing it as a constant state of mental rape.
Medical treatment has been effective in regulating common schizophrenia symptoms such as paranoia and delusions. But for the visions and voices, drug therapy is often only a temporary stopgap at best. It's devastating for the patients with the most severe disease. They suffer until death, bombarded by the incessant noise.
Do you have any problems with the medications, any side effects?
I never had any problem with medication.
Schizophrenia is a cruel disease, often striking people who are creative and smart. People like 56-year-old Connecticut resident Donald Johnson. Donald was a stellar student in high school. He also excelled in college, making the dean's list at Ohio Central State College and graduating with a top award in chemistry. At 38 years of age, he was in the middle of his career as a research chemist.
I was working at RCA in Princeton, New Jersey. When I thought I first heard some voices, then when I got home, I did hear some. I drove my car home that day,
And what did the voices say when you got home?
Said, you're no good, commit suicide.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Remember that picture you drew?
Yeah.
Donald's brother Benjamin says the family had a hard time witnessing the change in Donald.
And we'd be sitting there eating, and he would be having a conversation with somebody in the, in the corner. He'd look over in the corner and speak to this individual,
I was just afraid that we might have the voice problem again.
Barbara Ann Herbst Lautenbach was 28 when she experienced what doctors call a first break, the first hearing of voices. Now, at 50, the voices are still with her.
The voices keep telling me to die, and they say die, 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 die.
But what is it really like to see strange visions and hear bizarre voices? Without being schizophrenic themselves, doctors could only imagine what patients were describing. But now there is a way for experts to truly get inside the mind of a schizophrenic. So just put it up. Using the technique of virtual reality, Janssen Pharmaceuticals has developed this device to stimulate the visual and auditory hallucinations of a schizophrenic patient.
Hi. Sorry I'm late. I had to take a phone call.
There's nothing wrong with you.
You're the one in control.
It works like this. The viewer looks into the goggles and watches an animated virtual scenario.
Are you okay? You seem distracted. Have you been seeing anything unusual?
You're no
What's wrong with you?
Letting this one tell you what
can't
to do.
do anything right.
What the viewer sees is called Walk in Their Footsteps, and it puts the viewer, in this case me, into the shoes of a schizophrenic person visiting the psychiatrist while being barraged by constant hallucinatory images and voices.
You mentioned having trouble getting to sleep last time. How have you been sleeping?
As I watch this, it's incredibly distracting, so that if I were having to try to really focus on what this doctor is saying to me, I would find it almost impossible, I think, with all these noises and sights. But what was only distracting for me was downright frightening for Ken Steele. Okay. When Ken put on the goggles, he was emotionally thrown back to the time he could not escape the visions and voices. Within moments, he started to panic, sweating, and hyperventilating.
Last time, you were talking about volunteering.
There he is. There's the one.
Have you spoken to them yet?
Oh, wow.
It feels like what you can remember going through?
Very much so, Doctor. Yes, I remember this.
And that kind of distortion.
Yeah, yes.
The doctor would look like that to you.
Yes. This, yes. This. Oh.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, guys.
Ken got his life back again 6 years ago. He now champions the cause of the mentally ill through his newspaper, New York City Voices. Ken is now free of both his visions and his voices. The drug Risperidol finally stopped the racket in his head. But for a quarter of the 2.5 million schizophrenics, those most severely ill, medication has not worked to rid them of either auditory or visual hallucinations. Drugs are the only available treatment for visual hallucinations, but there is now a new and innovative approach to the treatment of auditory hallucinations.
This is the device that we use to do the research.
Donald and Barbara volunteered for a small study of this new treatment, led by Dr. Hoffman at the Yale Psychiatric Institute. Dr. Hoffman and his team tested a procedure called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. It involves sending short pulses of magnetic stimulation to an area on the left side of the brain that is activated by speech. Some scientific evidence suggests that this area may be involved in the hearing of voices, so Dr. Hoffman's team focused the TMS on that area. Dr. Hoffman tried the experimental procedure on 12 patients. They received 40 minutes of TMS over 4 days. 8 of the 12 responded to the treatment, some right away, others responding only after getting the stimulation for several days. It was easy for them to know that it had worked because suddenly there was silence.
Oh, welcome relief, welcome relief. I thought it was Christmas. Every day was Christmas. I didn't know peace.
Donald's voices went away for several weeks. His counselors at Family Services Woodfield saw him become his old self again. Barbara first had a positive reaction to TMS, but after 3 months of silence, the auditory hallucinations besieged her again.
Okay, Barbara, we're going to tip you back.
Okay.
Desperate for another chance at shutting out the voices, Barbara is now part of a new, larger TMS study led by Dr. Hoffman. When we saw her, she had undergone several sessions and had already experienced some relief again from the voices.
It's very beneficial to me. It's so much better than being doped up on a lot of drugs.
Dr. Hoffman emphasizes that the TMS is experimental. Still, if it is proven to be effective for the long term, TMS could provide a non-drug alternative to the hundreds of thousands of schizophrenics suffering auditory hallucinations.
The implications are wide as to just saving some young people, you know, that maybe somebody who has a scientific mind like my brother did, and the fact that they could return to a useful life again.
Tim, that was extraordinary to see and hear what it is like for a schizophrenic. That's really the way it is?
Well, I could hardly believe it myself the first time I saw it, that time at Yale with Ken. So I turned to him after he had seen it, and I said, Ken, is that really what it's like? It seems so unbelievable. And he said, Tim, that is what it's like.
Those faces, those voices. And there still is no treatment that can wipe this out. No one treatment.
No, there are drugs that are helpful today, but they're not precise. I think in the next 10 years we'll have some very precise treatments, and that'll be wonderful.
There has been so much misunderstanding about these people. Right. Let's hope that can happen. Thank you, Tim.
All right.
We'll be right back.
Trying to take sheer chance out of the equation. We'll take a look at an innovative school program when we come back.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Enron.
From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., we're paying for bandwidth that we are not using. Why?
It's estimated that since 1990, the number of school kids nationwide diagnosed with ADHD and subsequently put onto drugs such as Ritalin has increased 3 to 6 times. A notable exception to that trend, the Dallas public school system.
Gary, is that going to be okay with you? No medication.
Here, Dr. Glenn Pearson, the psychiatrist in charge of a district-wide mental health program, suggests what is going on in many other schools is unconscionable.
I'm very discouraged and angry. Ritalin makes everybody's life easier in the short run, but it contributes very little to the long-term positive outcome that we're all hoping for when we treat kids.
The mental health program here was started 7 years ago with a simple premise that children's emotional and mental needs are complex, require thorough evaluation and treatment, and usually the child alone is not the trouble. Jenny Jennings helped start the program.
I can't imagine any case where it's just the child has the problem. And that's why in our program, we really do a family history, might visit the child at home, do observations at home and in the classroom.
Hello, Mr. Jackson. How are you?
In clinics like this one, every day, parents come in with their children to talk about their problems, not with just counselors, but with psychiatrists.
So you got a report card.
And in this school district, just as in any other, many parents and teachers initially think their children are suffering from an attention problem.
Many of them come in and it's fairly obvious that that's not what's going on. There may be a component or there may be symptoms that are similar to what we'd see in ADHD, but they end up being a mood disorder, for instance.
Most of them have significant problems with social skills, with mood, with managing impulses, and with aggression.
All of which can be caused by many things other than ADHD. That is why the doctors here check out the child's physical development to make sure a nutritional deficiency is not to blame.
How much do you think you weigh?
They screen for learning disorders to see if that is causing tension.
At the end of the day, Mrs.
And they work with parents to see if something at home might be causing depression or frustration.
Everything else has been going okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Only after all of that do they even consider medication.
I like to have a kid in therapy and working and showing some understanding of his responsibility for his behavior before I give him the medication.
And just as the role of drugs is sharply constrained here, so is the role of teachers.
I don't believe the teacher's a mental health worker or a social worker. I think a teacher's there to teach.
Okay, let's go back here.
Teacher Kenneth Washington handles some of the kids with the worst behavior problems, and every day he sends home reports on their progress. He is consulted by their doctors, but when it comes to prescribing drugs...
I don't think as a teacher we have the right to tell a parent to put his son or daughter on Ritalin.
Well, some teachers think they not only have a right but a responsibility to do that.
No, we're not doctors.
Almost everyone here admits some kids do suffer from ADHD and may benefit from medication. But they say, look at the signs commonly used to diagnose hyperactive behavior. Almost constant fidgeting and restlessness, not sitting in the same seat very long, running or climbing at the wrong time or place, talking too much, always playing too loudly, always on the go, blurting out answers to questions in school, cutting in line or unable to wait for a turn in activities, interrupting others.
Sounds pretty normal. Looks pretty normal, doesn't it?
How do you make the difference? How do you figure out the difference between a kid who really is ADHD and one who's just an active child?
Well, there is not a test for ADHD. It's a clinical judgment.
A clinical judgment that, if it is improperly made and leads to medication, can keep much more serious learning problems masked for years.
And if you only treat the attention problem and don't address the learning disability, then you've still got a kid at 8th grade who doesn't read well and can't add.
But behaves.
But behaves.
Sometimes teachers just don't want to go that extra mile. Sometimes parents don't want to go that extra mile to find out what's the real problem.
You see the use of Ritalin and these other drugs as really a quick fix for them.
A quick fix, yes. That's my personal feelings.
The success of the program here in Dallas is undeniable. Since it began 7 years ago, troubled kids have had better attendance, better grades, and a much better chance that by the end of each year, they will have fewer problems.
I was like at my wit's end when I came here, and they really helped my daughter as well as me.
Plenty of children here use medication, but not as many as in other schools, and it is always only a small part of their treatment.
There are other things that these kids need. If they get those other things, they will do well in the long run, even if they don't get Ritalin.
In short, they believe when any child suffers from attention deficit, the first thing that child needs is attention. This is Tom Foreman for Nightline in Dallas.
When we come back, some practical advice from a family therapist who's been treating children for 20 years. Listening. You were twitching a little, your eyebrows were moving up and down. I interpret that more as a little bit of disapproval of some of what you heard. Give vent.
It seems like this discussion on Ritalin and ADD tends toward hyperbole. It's either, psychiatrists as noble knights rescuing children from the tyranny of their mental illness, or psychiatrists as evildoers, at the behest of lazy parents and teachers. And I'm afraid I don't think it's as simple as that. And and yet it tends toward this hyperbole and gets people on both sides very upset.
All right. Well, let's start with some simple questions, and you'll determine whether there are simple answers. Ritalin clearly helpful in many cases. Yes? No?
Ritalin is a stimulant, and low-dose stimulants will allow anyone, child or adult, ADD or not, focus on things they find boring and difficult. The fact that it works on children who struggle more in school shouldn't be a big surprise, but it causes a lot of confusion because they hear stimulant and they immediately think, well, it operates somehow differently on children.
Totally benign?
We've had 60 years experience using stimulants in children, and it seems so far that there are no terrible bad things. On the other hand, there's not a lot of evidence that in the long term it makes a big difference in the positive way, too.
But when you hear one of the people on the Tom Foreman interviewed say it does have a tendency to mask other things, would you agree with that?
I would say that relatively it allows that person to stick with things that are more difficult. And so if you have a learning problem, it'll allow you to stick with it, but it will not remediate your learning problem or teaching you coping techniques.
If in your neighborhood, your children were in a school district where it was up to the school administrators to say, Dr. Diller, we've been watching your kids, we think they ought to be on Ritalin, and if you don't agree, you're going to have to take them to another school. How would you feel about that?
Well, I don't think the schools in California, or at least in my neighborhood, do that. They may offer the parents some very difficult choices in terms of staying in a regular class versus a very special class with much more, fewer students and such like that. And these are the kinds of pressures that the parents and even I face in trying to make a decision between should we place, let's say, a Tom Sawyer or a Pippi Longstocking on medication. The child does not look that disturbed, and yet the choice may be here staying in a regular class or going into a special class.
Well, it may not be happening in the schools in your neighborhood in California, but clearly it's happening in one school. I mean, we just heard from this one mother who said, hey, they said either take your son out of school or put him on Ritalin.
The pressures are unmistakable, and while teachers don't say put your child on medication, and I'm not blaming teachers here because they have a hard job, the code is get your son a medical evaluation. The message is very clear there that the school has kind of thrown up its hands and is thinking in terms of medicating the child.
HMO is looking for the cheapest, the most expedient way out. Problem?
Problems in a big level. I'm sorry to say that the 15-minute evaluation for ADD continues to thrive out there in America. I have a website, and I get messages from anguished parents all the time. The doctor is reaching for the pad after the first 5 minutes. I think HMO situation only exacerbates the problems of primary care medicine, and it also makes it very difficult for a specialist like me to do anything but medicate the child when I see them.
So what's a parent to do? A parent who has no medical expertise of his own, who is hearing one thing from a doctor, one thing from a teacher, but who feels, hey, I don't think I really want my kids on drugs.
I think if you're lucky enough to live in a suburban or urban area, there's a wide range of people who you can go to. And my advice is to talk to the doctor or the evaluator and get their opinions on what this ADD thing is and how they approach it. And if they talk mostly about medication, and you're comfortable with that, that's up to you. But most parents, I find, are reluctant to put their children on medication initially and really want someone to meet the child, meet the family. Many of them are open to parenting strategies and very much want the doctor or the evaluator to work with the school. So I'd say, don't accept that 15-minute evaluation.
Dr. Diller, we're down to our last few seconds. Just deal for a moment with the reality of the pyramiding, the escalating number of children now on psychiatric drugs.
I think it's a message to our society here, really, in some ways, in that sense, I agree with Dr. Bragan, that we expect more from our children and are offering them, their families, and schools less. The ADD kid is merely the top of that pyramid. And I think this is a message to all the families and politicians out there that we have to give more than lip service in terms of children, families, and schools.
Dr. Dillon, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'll be back in a moment.
Headline broadcast by dialing 1-800-CALL-ABC or visiting abcnewsstore.com on the World Wide Web.
This has been a presentation of ABC.
Situations, but others managed to thrive. Monday, Tiger Woods proved once again that he's a clutch player. With 7 holes left, he came from 7 strokes behind. The win was his 6th consecutive PGA Tour victory. Scientists say such grace under pressure is largely a learned behavior. We did our own experiment to find out what separates winners from those who choke. Here's Dennis Murphy.
The kicker who couldn't, the shooter who should have, and another miss by Nick Anderson. And the putter who would have won the Masters if only he hadn't choked.
They just clearly miss it and blow it, and everybody in the stands knows it, that they've choked.
Now, Dan Landers, a sports psychology professor at Arizona State University, was intrigued when his colleague, assistant professor Debbie Cruz, proposed an experiment to manufacture the choke performance in a laboratory setting. To be exact, on a 1-hole miniature golf course.
So on a Sunday afternoon, I'm sitting on the couch, I say, man, that guy just blew it. you were asking a more scientific version of that question.
That's right. We want to know why they blew it. We want to know what happened inside of them specifically.
We've all seen memorable chokes in living color, but if you could peer inside an athlete's brain and watch a choke in the making, what do you think you'd see?
Okay, Cap's next.
Debbie recruited students who were all pretty good golfers and hooked them up to these heart and brain monitors. Each test subject, unaware that we were watching, was asked to putt 20 balls. The number they sank, say 10 of 20, became their baseline score. Easy enough. But then the guinea pigs had to pay because there was another round of play, another 20 balls. But this time, for every shot they missed,
clean needle, it's going to pop out.
Gotcha.
The scientists would draw a pinprick of blood.
Obviously, you're trying to make every putt now because otherwise you're going to get pricked.
The idea of the Arizona State experiment was that the pinprick would put the laboratory golfer under pressure. Maybe a little like what the pros feel when they have to come up with a big shot.
They start the negative spiral, the negative thinking, and the worry. That's the danger.
But as it turned out, 7 of the 10 test golfers actually scored better when faced with that pinprick.
Unfortunately, I don't think that fazed a lot of them.
We thought we could turn the screws and produce some real chokes by surprising the test subjects a la Candid Camera.
Wave to the blimp cam.
John has suddenly gone from student to star, facing the possibility of coast-to-coast humiliation.
Could use a drink.
Making his national TV debut, John's game immediately goes south. He sinks just 2 of his first 15 putts.
Mark, what are we seeing on heart?
Heart rate's jumped from low 60s to about 125.
As you can see, the faster the spikes on this monitor, the higher the pulse rate.
5 for 20.
That's terrible.
But we had another surprise, something even more stressful. There'd be another round on TV, but this time with money on the line.
This is real money.
We made each test subject a wager. If they could equal their baseline performance, in John's case that's 9 putts, we'd pay out $300. But if they blew it, if they choked, they'd have to pay us.
Mark, what's our telemetry showing?
He's somewhere in about the 130s now. His heart rate's starting to go.
Here's the crucial 19th putt. It's do or die.
Did you feel it? I mean, physiologically, could you feel?
Yeah, my knees are shaking.
And it wasn't just the knees. The scientists could spot a panicky putter from brainwaves. Take this subject, for instance. Kelly sank a record 15 putts in the first round.
Nice.
And in Kelly's brain picture from that stress-free round, the colors are subdued, mostly blues and greens, indicating her concentration is strong.
So the electrodes are recording a brain pretty much in a tranquil state.
That's correct.
But now look what happened when we crashed the experiment.
That's not bothering you, is it, Kelly, that camera right in her face?
She got rattled. She made only 9 putts, 6 less than her baseline.
Ooh.
And her brain snapshots have radically changed too. Now the colors are raging, reflecting an agitated mind, and that sabotages peak performance.
Did you choke, do you think?
Yeah. I am ready.
Here's Stormy, who made 11 putts in her baseline round. 2 putts left. Heart rate nearly doubled. It's $300 on the line.
It's not going to get there.
It's not going to be that way. Which takes us in the world of sports to one shot on which everything is riding.
It's in.
She's in the money. She's in the money. An interesting case of not choking under pressure. Stormy's heart rate was sky high, and she was nervous.
Her legs were shaking. Her legs were definitely shaking.
So why was it that some choked and Stormy didn't? According to the scientists, at the key moment, just before striking the ball on her winning putt, Stormy's concentration level went up, and her heart rate, previously elevated, actually went down.
Some could control that and work with it, whereas others couldn't.
For those of us who are never going to be on the free throw line for the critical shot, never going to be at the 18th green, why should we even care?
I think there are a lot of us that have to get up sometimes and give a talk in our job or present themselves well to the boss. And if they go in worrying and thinking negatively, more apt than not, they're not going to come across the way they want to.
There were 5 winners, and as it turned out, all of them played collegiate sports or just loved to compete.
Thank you very much.
They had the experience to control the stress and focus on the task at hand.
They shut you out. They were able to do that once they get over the ball.
But as even world-class athletes know, nothing is really 100% automatic. Even they can have a bad day at the office and choke.
And he misses 4 straight.
When we come back, after more than a century on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, a treasure ship is finally found. The difficult and delicate process of